Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, working on the free T again. So the last episode you saw where I cut down the top half of the windshield frame. We took that, we cut it, got it narrowed down to a width that I think will work with the cowl and everything's together. And like I mentioned in a lot of these videos, I kind of am figuring it out as we do the videos. I want you guys to kind of understand what it takes to do this kind of stuff. If you haven't done it before, some people think that it's, the stuff just comes really easy. It does not. It's a lot of figuring out. That's why I like to do these videos off the cuff, exactly how, basically exactly how the stuff is built. And if you've done this work before, you can probably relate and understand all the back and forth and the time that goes into building this. So we got the windshield frame cut, set up, and kind of got an idea of the angle we want. We're going to try and match the angle sort of closely to the angle of the tubing in the back of the body here, within maybe 10 degrees or so. And that's what we want the kind of the pitch of the windshield frame to be. So the next thing is to get the windshield mounted to the body. We need to figure out stanchions. At the end of the last video, I thought I was going to use the original adjustable stanchions that were bolted to the top half. Looked like it would work pretty good, but then as I started kind of messing around and we were starting to play with the extra set I have, I cut them down, held them up. They just weren't going to work. They had to be so short, it just didn't seem like it was going to flow really well, and I was kind of forcing things to try and use this adjustable section. So I went back to my original plan, sort of, which was using the actual stanchions for the bottom of the windshield frame, using them on the cowl. Now they sort of match the cowl. We're gonna have to do a lot of slicing and dicing, I think, but this gives us kind of a silhouette to start out with, and I think with some modifications I can make it work and all kind of flow together, and it's a little easier than starting with just nothing with flat plate. So first thing I need to do with these lower stanchions, they actually wrap around onto the dash on this side. But the first thing I need to do, because this is an early car, is it had mounts for the kerosene lamps that would have bolted to here. So this car is early enough that it would have had kerosene lamps on it potentially. And these are the original stanchions that came with the free T body when we first got it. So I'm going to cut that off and try and mock it up. We're going to try and get this cut in half and kind of moved around, see where everything works, fill in the gaps. We're also going to try and get some wood together and make a mock windshield out of some wood now that it's narrowed down, so we can get the windshield centered and kind of fixtured in place. And hopefully by the end of this we will have a pair of stanchions that are fit and at the very least tacked in place, but hopefully I can get them all built and blended in by the end of the video. So let's get started. right, so we started working on our design there. You guys saw where we cut apart the old stanchions, and we were kind of starting to figure out where everything needed to be, and we really realized that we need to get this windshield frame set up with a piece of plywood and kind of get it centered and fixtured to the cowl, and then we can kind of fill in the gaps on those pieces that we cut apart and slid in. We can kind of blend everything together, but we really need to get the windshield frame set and fixtured. Well, as we were about to start cutting our plywood, I kind of just stood back and looked at the windshield frame, and I realized that this side was really bent. It wasn't 90, it wasn't anywhere close to it. You could see it from a mile away. This other side was not great either, but when we put a square on this side, you could just see how far this side is bent in. I was going to start doing pie cuts or use heat to bend it all out, and we decided to just test this side by putting it in the vise, giving it a little bounce on it, and we were actually able to get this side done and bent back the little bit that it was out with basically no effort, and it didn't really change the outside radius. So this side we're going to try and do the same thing. This has to move quite a bit more, but with how little of effort it took, I think we should be able to get it pretty good. So we're going to throw it in the vise here and see if we can get this side back to a nice 90-degree angle. It looks good. Oop, I can feel it right there. Let me go just one more little. Oop.
Just one more and it folds in half.
Yeah.
Just one more.
Dude. If that was my job, I'd be good at it. All right, so Jason and I have been working on these stanchions, trying to get them closer to sort of fitting, so we've been slowly trimming them back. And you can see in here, you know, this stuff doesn't quite line up, but what we're doing is we're trying to use the original pieces as a silhouette. So we have the bottom piece kind of sitting tight at the bottom where it meets the dash in here, and you can see there's like some overlapping parts. So what we've been doing is where it's overlapping, we're slowly trimming it back, sanding it back to get everything to kind of fit. We got rid of right in here, we got rid of the section that was really wide and sticking out because of the way the old windshield was. So now it's just about even, other than some casting here that's really kind of fat. We'll sand that back later, but that's fitting pretty decent. We're gonna, like I mentioned, cut this part off down in here so that we can continue the bead along the side, and then we'll also make a front filler piece here that will all look pretty when it's done. Now the other side, when you're dealing with like 100 or almost 100-year-old castings, totally different. So this, not totally, but a little different. This one we've sanded about, oops, we've sanded about the same, but look at the gap in there. When we split the casting, this one, I don't know if it came out more or what, but there's not as much meat left in the top. So in here we're like really thin, and we really need to cut away where that line is. We need to sand it back. So I think what we're gonna do is, now that we have both of the stanchions kind of close, we're gonna work on getting the driver's side one to fit a little better, and maybe get it tacked up and kind of going in the right direction, and then we can kind of try and make the passenger side blend and look basically the same. So that's where we're at with it. The look at the killer view, one of them, is back here. This is why I made the windshield narrow like I did. It's almost exactly the same width as the dash. So when it's, you know, when you're standing behind the car like this, the stanchions just kind of flow on the outside, and the windshield frame is basically even with the width of the dash, which looks really killer. So we'll keep working on it and update you guys when we get just a little bit further. All right, so with a little bit of help, I got the upper and lower pieces of the stanchions fit to the car, and the general shape kind of figured out, and got the angle of the windshield kind of locked in place with these stanchions, and I clecoed them in place after I kind of stitch welded a little bit of the pieces together, and now I am ready to start kind of filling in the gaps and basically sculpturing these windshield stanchions. Now, one thing I am fighting a little bit is this is old cast steel, I guess you could say. I don't know if I'd say cast iron, but it's cast steel, and the quality is questionable. I'm finding as I am welding it, it's spitting and popping on me. It's probably not the best quality metal. There may even be some, I don't know exactly what's made up of it as far as the types of metals that are in it, but I am finding it's popping and carrying on a little bit. I am mixing between just a normal ER70S standard steel filler rod and some stainless rod, because the stainless seems to flow out a little better. I've kind of gotten a tip before in the past from some guys that are much better than me at TIG welding, that when welding cast steel, sometimes you can use stainless rod because it flows in a little better. It'll help with fighting heavy cast pieces from cracking. When you go to weld them, sometimes they will crack immediately if with just using the standard rod. So I'm bouncing back and forth. What I'm trying to do is fill this gap here. Now, normally if we were doing sheet metal work, I would tell you do not fill a gap like this with just filler rod. You're gonna put too much heat into a sheet metal panel, it's gonna warp, it's gonna act crazy. But because we're trying to actually like sculpture this, what I'm doing is I've turned the heat a little bit down, and I'm basically weaving back and forth and building up the weld so I can fill this gap. What that's doing for me is it's giving me 100% penetration all the way through, and it's giving me some extra metal that I can sand and kind of sculpt this thing into the shape that I need. So I'm gonna start by building it all up, getting the gap filled. I'll start knocking it down and then fill it again and kind of get everything to flow really nicely. But this is the first step. So this is just a reality with it. We're not CNC cutting a piece, something real high end. This is just the old school way, except we're using a TIG instead of a gas torch. So I'll fill this up and we'll kind of just show you guys the process as we get a little closer to having fitting stanchions for the car. All right, so I got the mounts all blended, rough blended in. Still need a lot more work if we're gonna get them to the point of being painted, powder coated, or maybe chromed. Doubt I'm gonna chrome them, but they need a little more work to get them all blended and nice and flat. But you can see in the back here a couple things I need to do before we kind of finish up this part of the video. Where the two pieces joined right here, I need to make that blend a little nicer, and that is just a little bit of welding, sanding to kind of make that union join together as one and look correct. The other side is needs a little more work. That side is the one that I think I mentioned earlier. It turned out that stanchion was actually considerably different where it mounted to the body and the way it was actually made. Was different than the other side, so it's not a one-for-one for how we're modifying them. Pretty close, but not exact. You can see how on the side, this one has a little crack. I need to fix that. This is just part of building parts out of original parts. Is, you know, sometimes you have to do repair work on top of modification. So you can see this is all pretty smooth. I made it kind of down here, just roll down with that body line. I'm going to make the body line section here that I wasn't going to make. Now I am going to make that piece so that it all flows and looks good. The other thing, the major thing I have to do now is right here where it meets the body. I just need to make a little blend section right in here. So that's just going to be a little bit of filler rod. I'm going to build up the area and then sand it, fit it to the body, sand it, fit it to the body, and eventually it will fit all nice. Now this side is actually, step over here. This side's actually a little different than that side. The radius is actually just a little bit higher than the other one we found when they're set on the body. So this flange is actually a little thicker underneath of the radius, and that's what kind of tipped us off. And then we started kind of running a laser across the body and found out that this radius is just a little bit higher than that one. Again, this stanchion has been different the whole way, pretty much from the other side, so I don't know what happened. So I'm gonna have to sand this flange down so that it matches the other side as far as the thickness goes, or I may need to drop this radius down to match. More than likely I'm gonna have to drop the radius down and do a little bit of filler rod action to kind of blend it all back in, but we want to make that so that it's similar to the other side and not totally different. And you can see how this fits the side on this one too. So this one isn't cracked, but they both need a little more work. This one, I think I'm going to do a little more work to this corner once we get the bead section made, but I'm going to hold off for now till we're a little closer. But big thing is I wanted to get these stanchions made so that they fit the car and bolt on before we start doing body work. So I'm not doing heating and bending and welding with body filler or primer on the car. So I'm going to modify these just a little bit more, and then we should be able to wrap up the project for this video and show you guys kind of where we're at. All right, after a bunch of sanding and heating and welding and some more sanding, I got them satisfactory for now. I'm pretty happy with how they came out. They fit the body really nice. They're fairly symmetrical, and they kind of fit like the car. They flow really nice. The car looks like it's going fast sitting still, which is really important. The only things I have to do yet is I have to get a rib nut tool to add a couple of threaded inserts into the side of the cowl and the dash so that the stanchions actually bolt onto the car, but the major fitting and grinding is done, so we can kind of move on to something else. I can do that just when I have a spare hour or so. I can drill the last couple holes and fit that stuff in. Now the one major thing I do need to do as far as body modifications go is I need to make a little bit of a bead panel that I can actually add into the side of the car here, and that should take care of making this all kind of blend and look like it's supposed to be that way. But overall, I'm really happy with it. The thing looks kick-ass, which is the most important thing, and now we can move on to the next step of the car, which I don't really know what that is yet. But after we get back from California, I will kind of start standing around and figure out what's next on the car, but we're getting really, really close to the point of being able to do body filler and primer and all that, which is going to be awesome. So that's all I have for this one. I appreciate you guys following along as always. We do videos on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. Drop us a comment. Let me know what you think of the new stanchions and windshield. And thanks, guys. Catch you later.